Hi guys, and welcome back to Rebellious Menstruation. I'm just going to do a quick update. I have addressed this in other videos, or in at least 2 other videos that I can remember. And it's a question that keeps popping up over and over and over again. Is how many cloth pads do I actually need? And I keep seeing the answer of 15 to 20 provided, and it kind of is it's just kind of frustrating to keep hearing that that's the answer, I guess. That keeps getting repeated, and I'm unsure if this keeps getting repeated because people hear it or watch it in other YouTube videos, or watch or read it in other blogs, but it's certainly not the experience of anyone that I know who has gone to cloth pads. The best way to answer this question is not to compare what you have currently to the type of stashes that you see in some of these videos, but to ask yourself how many that you use currently. So if you are still using single-use disposable products and you are looking at transitioning towards cloth pads and menstrual cups, 20 is an incorrect answer, and it's going to be incorrect, and if you believe it, it's just going to end up frustrating you, because it's also an impossible question to answer with an actual number. There is no answer with a particular number, so anyone who gives you the answer of 15 to 20 is not telling the truth. Because your period yourself is unique, and it is particular to what you do. I have known people who have got one menstrual cup and they have gotten a set of Thinx underwear, and that's all they use. That's all they have, and that's all they've had for years. They do not use any type of cloth pads. They have travelled through Europe and backpacked through Asia, with their menstrual cup and their, 7 pairs of period underwear, and that suits them perfectly fine. I know other people who don't use any form of internal protection like a menstrual cup, however, are really, really light. And so their period only lasts 3-4 days. They have a very, very light flow, and so they use body underwear. They don't need to change that over the day. They can just wear one pair of underwear for the entire day, change it at night, and they're fine. So they have one pair for the day, one pair for the night overnight, and that's all they'll use. So they essentially kind of have like 6 pairs of body underwear, and they just have the regular version. They don't even need the heavy version because that's their flow. And they have changed to reusable menstrual products for a variety of reasons. However, they wouldn't need 15 to 20 pads. And in actual fact, don't have pads at all now. They just used body underwear. Or this other girl who backpacked and travelled used a menstrual cup and Thinx underwear. And both of those things were specific and unique to their personal preferences and their personal choices. So please don't come onto YouTube or reading blogs and look at 15 to 20 and go, oh, that's how many I need, because it's not the truth. The truth is you need to look at how many you currently use. You need to look at how many do you use in your current cycle? And that's really the best way for you to see how many of these you're going to need. I used to change every 2 hours. I used to change a super tampon every 2 hours when I was at work, and I would need to change I would wear overnight, like the good nights, Libra good nights for Australians, you'll know what that means, during the day. And even if I wasn't wearing an internal protection, I would have to change those Libra good nights again every 2.5 hours. I have a 6-day period. So I would be using 40 to 50, probably 40 to 60 products, depending on the circumstances, for the duration of my period. The cost of these disposable products cost me about $40 a month. That was without painkillers, that was without anything else. So just my products. I have gone over this in another video in more detail, but my specific circumstances led me to choose the amount of pads, because that is what I used during my period, and that was a much more accurate representation of how many cloth pads I personally would need, and it's definitely not 15 to 20. I would probably use about, I think my last period I used 2 menstrual cups over the 3 days that I was at, I used my menstrual cup when I was at work, so that was 3 days. I wore a backup pad, a backup liner generally while I'm at work, just in case anything happens. And during that time, so over the 6 days of my period, 3 of them were at work, and I used 20, and 3 of those days I used over the day, over the 12 hours of the day, I used 1 pad and a menstrual cup. I still used 27 pads. So there is no way that I could have had 15 to 20 pads in my stash and got through my period. And while every woman I know says that they have a heavy period, what I did to kind of, I guess, experiment with this, an average menstrual cycle will give you between 40 to 80 mils of blood. So what I did is 1 month it used only my menstrual cup and it measured the blood. The next month would only use pads. The month after that I would use another menstrual cup and measure and write down how much blood was coming out. Next month, so over 6 months, I switched out between menstrual cups and pads. So the 3 months that I tested, I think I did 75 mils, 73 mils, and 68 mils. So I am at the higher end of normal, but I'm still within a normal parameter. So I would definitely recommend you do that for yourself too, is measure and write down and track exactly how much blood that you are getting out, and do it, every second month for 6 months or 12 months to really track how you're going. But taking out other issues like financial costs, because reusable menstrual products are more expensive, but they are cheaper in the long run, but they still require a higher investment rate, at least at the start. So we're going to take out that, and we're going to take out period poverty, and I do have another video on that, but just for the moment, just for the sake of argument, we're going to say that you can go out and afford to purchase an entire stash straight away. You need to count how many times you change now. You need to see on your heavy day how many times you change, on your light day how many times you change, what you do in preparation for all of this type of stuff. That's the number that you need to be using, and that's the number that you need to start to build towards, because saying 15 to 20 is giving you a false sense of what you should be doing and how much you should be aiming for. The subsidiary questions to how much should I buy or how many should I have is that is the answer. How many do you currently use on your current cycle? Once you have that answer, you can then work towards that. you can also work towards, would you prefer to use a menstrual cup? Would you prefer to use underwear? Would you prefer to use cloth pads? Or would you prefer to use a combination of all three? Once those questions are answered, you then can start looking at purchasing the sizes that you want, or purchasing the shapes that you want, or purchasing the type of cup that you need. And sometimes, unfortunately, you might get the wrong cup. Put a cup in it. They have a website. They also have a YouTube channel, and they have a survey. You know, so if you kind of invest in the prep work before you start purchasing, hopefully you'll get a few less mistakes, like buying the wrong cup or the cup that doesn't suit you. You know, you'll need to find out your cervix height first. You know, you'll need to find out, does your cervix height change? I wore 2 menstrual cups in my last cycle because my second day I ended up going to work. And I am very, very heavy on the second day. So I had to wear my biggest cup to catch most of that flow. I still went over the cup by, I think, the 10th hour mark, but still I used my bigger cup. On the second, so what would be the third day, or my second day at work, I used a smaller cup which was softer, because by that time I've noticed that if I put in my firmer cup, I tend to need to go to the bathroom all the time, or it just pushes on my bladder. No matter how many times I take it in and out, it just pushes on my bladder and will kind of hit the side of my cervix. So I think my cervix, while still being really, really high and would be considered to be high at the time, has dropped in relation to where it usually sits for me. So on my, usually, I mean, if I'm at home, I'll wear cloth pads. I very rarely, if ever, will wear internal protection when I'm at home, because obviously I have access to my cloth pad stash and facilities to change as frequently as I need to. And when I'm at work, I don't particularly want to be fiddling around with stuff, so I'll use my cup because it's convenient when I need to be at work. So these are the type of questions that you really need to be looking at. What do I want to use at home? What do I want to use at work? The subsidiary questions to this, or the questions that sit kind of behind these answers or underneath these answers, are your finances. What can you afford? How can you afford it? How long is it going to take you to build up your stash? So if you're purchasing 1 or 2 pads per month to build up your stash, or a pair of underwear, because the Modibody and Thinx underwear are not cheap to buy. Although there is a new company in Australia that is sold in Woolworths, which is a major big box shopping chain over here, that's called Luna Love, I believe, and they sell, I think, size 10, size 12 and size 14 period underwear, actually in the menstrual hygiene aisle. I think what they call it, the feminine hygiene aisle. So if you are, I think it's 8 to 10, 10 to 12 and 12 to 14 size underwear. If you fall within that size range, you can, and I think they're about $15, taking out, you know, sales items and stuff like that. So whereas I think Thinx and Modibody range from about $35 plus. So, you know, your finances and your ability to access these types of things kind of sit underneath and behind these questions when you're asking them. That shouldn't affect your answer, but it obviously is going to affect your ability to acquire the number that you've come up with, or the number that you think you should use. So I just realised how long my nails are. My nails are usually never this long, because when I have my period, I usually cut them quite far down, because I don't want to scratch the inside of my vaginal canal. So my nails grow really, really fast, because they're probably only cut 3 weeks ago. So yes, I thought this is, while I've done 2 other videos on this before, and this video is probably going to be a bit ranty, but I just saw another one this morning that was posted this week. So it is, I mean, it's 2019, and we shouldn't be perpetuating answers that, you know, I saw in videos from 4 or 5 years ago. It just kind of seems a little bit that these videos have been watched, and then YouTubers who are making videos now about this type of stuff have just gone, oh, I'll use that answer. No. It wasn't an appropriate answer 5 years ago, and it's not an appropriate answer now, because it takes out any of the personalization surrounding this. And it just kind of frustrates me that, you know, at this point what we have is each other, and at this point what we have is the information that we share with each other across the cloth pad community. And when I don't want a new person who comes into the community, or who sees the community, or who comes to watch these types of videos from the variety of us that make them, to hear an answer like 15 or 20, think I can actually reasonably afford that, get 15 or 20, and then realise they're going to have to be washing every day, or realise that they're going to have to be doing, you know, they're going to have to compromise on what they can wear and what they want to wear, or they'll have to go out and buy single-use disposables to actually then complete their period cycle. So not only do they have cloth pads that they think, oh, I've got enough and it's exciting, but then they're then expending more income on, or more limited income and money on disposables, because they weren't aware that 15 to 20 may not be enough if you're only using cloth pads. So I hope this, you know, helps out some viewers, or helps out even some existing viewers, and helps out some newbies in answering the questions. So, you know, just to kind of reiterate, ask yourself, what do you want to use? Do you want to use internal protection? Do you want to use underwear? Do you want to use cloth pads? Or do you want to use a combination of these three things? If you want to use something like cloth pads and underwear, decide how much you want to wash and how many times you want to wash over your cycle, or if you just want to wash at the end of your cycle type thing. Once you've decided all of these things, figure out your budget to actually, and how long it's going to take you to build up that stash, and transition through to from disposables to reusables. Good luck on your journey. If you have any further questions, please ask me below. You can also tweet me, Instagram me, and email me, as well as commenting below, and all of those details are in the comment below. Thanks for listening to this exceptionally long rant, but I just thought it needed to kind of be said. So thanks, and bye. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Rebellious Menstruation. This is going to be part Q&A and part rant. I have addressed this question in other videos, but I recently saw a video in the last week, again, that suggested that you'll need 15 to 20 cloth menstrual pads to get through your cycle. So this will be addressing how many cloth pads you will need in your cycle. To answer 15 or 20 cloth pads really infuriates me, because it is essentially a lie. The truth is that the actual number is a highly personal experience, and it's also because it's predicated on personal preference. So you could be using a menstrual cup, and therefore you may only need 5 cloth pads because you're using them for backup. You may be using only cloth pads. which means you may need a size, shape or variety that suits you. You could have a really light period and choose to go with menstrual underwear like Thinx, Modibody or Luna Love. So the thing is that while every woman I have personally spoken to, I think I've spoken to one woman who says that she has a light period, but everyone else says that they're heavy. And to be honest with you, I was also one of those people. And when I switched over to using menstrual cups and cloth pads, I actually used only my cup for 3 of my periods over a 6-month period to actually record how much blood I actually lost. I lost 68 mils, 72 mils and 75 mils. And what this actually means is that I was in a normal rate of loss. Between 40 and 80 mils is generally how they do that, and that can be, and within that range is considered to be normal or average, which is fine. So for me, I fitted into this normal range. So and to get more details, you can watch my other videos on this. But the thing is, you do not need 15 or 20 pads. What you need is how many your particular menstrual cycle gets for you. So this is why answering 15 to 20 pads is really infuriating for me, because it is leading newbies astray. So newbies are coming to YouTube, they're watching videos and they're hearing, oh, all I need is 15 pads to get me through. Or I've heard as low as 12. Oh, you only need 12 pads. And it's so infuriating, because really, terrible advice for newbies. The best thing is you need to consider several things before you start going to reusable products. And this is going to determine how much you need to purchase and what you need to purchase. So you need to ask yourself, what type of protection do you in fact use? Do you use internal or external protection? If you only want to use internal protection, then menstrual cups are the answer for you. Or, in fact, a menstrual cup. So while menstrual cups can be usually between, $35 and $60, you'll only have to purchase that once in 10 years. So before you actually purchase your menstrual cup, you will need to make sure of several things. Do you need what is your cervix height? Do you need a tall, low or medium cervix heighted cup? Put a Cup in It, which is both a YouTube channel and a website, I'll link it below for you, has both a survey and quite a few videos on how to check for your cervix height and how to check for picking the best cup. And they do have the survey on picking your best cup. So that would mean that if that's all you want to use, you could get out of this with one menstrual cup. If you feel that you need backup to that, you may actually go through cloth pads or period underwear. But really, depending on how long your period lasts for, if your period lasts for 3 days, you may buy 6 liners to wear, 1 during the day and 1 at night, or you may choose to purchase period underwear like Thinx, Modibody or Luna Love. So you may purchase 3 pairs of underwear and a menstrual cup. And that's all you're going to need for your cycle for the next 5 to 10 years. You may actually only want internal protection. So that's for the answer of internal protection. You may want external protection only. which means you have to look at whether you want to get menstrual cloth or the menstrual underwear, like Muddy Body thinks and Luna Love. So that will change your answer again. How long is your period? Is it 3 days? Is it 4 days? Is it 5 days? Is your second day heavier? Is your first, second and third day really heavy and your fourth and fifth day really light? Is your first and second day really light? So you may be choosing, do you bleed at the front? Do you bleed at the back? Do you need longer pads than what is generally offered on the market? I have known friends who have been such heavy bleeders that they've had to use maternity pads just to get through their period. I've known people who can't use super tampons because they only last about half an hour. So they've had to use these maternity pads because that's what is available to them. In the cloth pad community, you can get pads that are 16 or 17 inches long that are able to accommodate your bleeding style. So you could bleed just at the back, you could bleed down to the side, you could bleed to the front, you can bleed straight down the middle. All of these things are normal for you. And so when you're buying your cloth pads, you have to be more aware of where you bleed on the pad, of how you bleed on the pad, of what days are heavy or light, and how many pads you're going to need to get to actually balance that out. You're going to need to know where you are at, how your body responds to certain things. So it's not a matter of you being heavy or light or internal or external protection. It's a matter of what is going to work for you. And then purchasing all of those, well, not all of those, but then directing your attention to which style of product that you want, which type of product that you want, and maybe experimenting a little bit is to see what type of pad that you need. I have a video up on shaped pads. I really like shaped pads because my bleeding pattern is generally center, but can sometimes just go into a random direction every now and then. So shaped pads, especially shaped pads that are at the front, actually work well for me. Sometimes this kind of rounded shape at the back works for me. Sometimes the rounded shape at the front works for me. Sometimes these types of OBVs work for me when I have a gush. Sometimes these type of cotton straight up and down one works. So I have a variety of shapes and sizes that will work for me. It took me a little bit of trial and error to realise that. My sister has got a lot of the pads that don't work for me because I destashed all of them once I figured out that they weren't working. However, I still have about 80 pads on me because if I'm using, I prefer external protection, and I can use up to 50 pads a cycle because my cycle lasts for 6 days. And the second and the third day can be quite heavy. So I also have quite heavy discharge, and I tend to have discharge over the whole month. So I tend to have quite a few liners, like these 8-inch liners right here, that I will use throughout the month. If I am at work, I will also wear a menstrual cup, rather than having to change my pad all the time. It is more convenient for me in a workplace than having to go to the bathroom every 2 or 3 hours to change. When I used disposable products, I would have to change a super tampon on day 2 and day 3 every 2 hours, and more often than not I would have bled through them. However, the menstrual cups works for me in that context. So I have several. I also have an exceptionally high cervix, and that cervix for me means that I have a longer cup and a slightly wider cup. So on my heavy days, I use the Yuhi Rainbow Large. When I'm like not so heavy, or when I'm a bit light, I've been using the Lali cup. I also quite like the Ruby cup, but the Ruby cup is kind of small, and so sometimes can get like right up there, and sometimes it takes me a couple of minutes to get out. Now, back to how many do you need? You need to record what type that you need. You need to understand your cycle, and you need to understand how many products that you use right now. If you're using tampons most of the time and just using a light pad as a backup, you might do very well to get a menstrual cup and a couple of pairs of Thinks or a couple of pairs of Modi Body. You may find that that's going to work out really, really well for you. If the idea of internal protection is something that you hate, is something that you don't want to deal with, is something that you don't want to use, then you're going to be looking at either underwear or cloth pads. And how long does you, if you're, I used to work with a girl who had very light periods. This is the only person I know who has light periods, but she bought several Modi Body underwear and uses it over her period. She doesn't need any more than that, and she doesn't. She has about 6 pairs. She'll wear one over the day and one at night, and that suits her perfectly fine. So when you are thinking about this stuff, keep in mind that it's not, you don't have to be as excessive as a lot of the videos that you see on YouTube. And on top of that, you can completely adjust your product to your cycle, which is why suggesting 15 or 20 cloth pads is a horrendous misjustice for newbies to this community. Like, it's 2019 when I'm filming this. It was literally this year that I have been seeing people still suggesting this. Stop it. Stop suggesting that your period and that your experience is going to be the same as anybody else's, because it's not. All I can do as somebody who's posting videos on YouTube is talk about my experience, and maybe the best way for you to find out what is your best answer. Yes, there are other considerations when you are purchasing these types of products, which include financial considerations, your access to both work and money, and maybe your age and the fact that you may be young and living with your parents. Those are definitely considerations that you need to account for. But those are really secondary accounts that I'm going to treat them like secondary accounts right now, because what we're really focusing on is that how many period products do you need is completely dependent on what you use, how heavy you are, what your preferences are, and what you need to actually be able to get through your period. Sure, your financial situation will influence and dictate whether you can implement your plan or whether you can implement the number that you come up with. But that number that you come up with is still what's going to suit you. Do you have, are you able to do a wash every day? If you get 10 pads and you use 6 a day, but your period goes for 5 days, you're going to need to wash and dry them. Quite often these here might take, depending on your climate, 2 or 3 days to actually dry effectively. These are not made to go in the dryer. So as a consequence, these, depending on their heaviness, style, shape and fabric, may take 2 or 3 days in your climate to dry. What are you going to do then? So you need to consider all of those. Do you have access to a washing machine? Can you wash and dry these in enough time that it will take you to then have to wear again? Do you want to be wearing the 1 or the 2 pads 2 or 3 times in your cycle? These are the type of considerations that you need to sit down and look at and then go, okay, I can do my washing at the end of the week, or I do my washing once a week in a communal facility. So are you able to only have 15 pads and get through your cycle? If you're using, when I was using reusables, I used 15 I didn't use 15 pads. I used up to 40 pads. And tampons and liners and everything like that just to get through one of my cycles. My period is 6 days long. So the reality for me is that 20 pads would have got through a third of my cycle to half of my cycle. It would not have been the entire cycle for me. So if I was working, my last job was I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. I didn't have time to be washing these every day to then wear them the next day or the third day. The reality of the situation is you're not going to ever find a perfect number of cloth pads. You're not going to ever find somebody who should be giving you the perfect number, because you need to do the research into your cycle. I can't tell you what your cycle's like. You're going to know how many disposable products that you currently use. You may use less product than you could be using because you can't afford it. You may be only able to afford a certain amount of tampons or pads for your cycle, so therefore you would use them longer than you want. If you are transitioning to these, look at your options. There are cloth pads, there is underwear, and there are menstrual cups. So you can actually go, I want to wear cloth underwear, I want to wear period underwear, and so you can invest your limited income into starting that collection. It might take you a year to build up, your 7 pairs of underwear that you can use, but it's what you've got to do, and it's what you've got how you've actually understood your own period. So that's really my best advice for you, is that don't listen to the 15 or 20 pads. Know your own cycle, understand your own cycle, look at the available options out there for reusable products, including cloth pads, menstrual cups, and period underwear. Pick the ones that you want to use. If you're financially viable enough to actually test these pads out, or underwear out, or cups out, test them out and find out what works out best for you, and then focus on that. Because you may want 0 cloth pads and just use underwear and cups, or you may want 60 cloth pads to get you through a cycle. So I hope you find your way, and I hope you find out what works best for you. Thanks for watching and listening to my rant about irresponsible YouTubers suggesting ridiculous amounts of pads that aren't leading you in the right direction. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. You can comment below. You can also tweet me, Instagram me, and email me. All of those comments are below. Go check out Put a Cup in It. They have lots of further information on menstrual cups and best sizing and shapes. Bye.